Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review the book of Boba Fett. So, this movie, of course, is to tie in, of course, the 4, 5, and 6 Star Wars movies, if people had no clue because they don't know who Boba Fett is. Uh, really, this is to be a continuation from the last time we are to have actually seen Boba Fett. So, if a lot of people are kind of confused because they're like, well, he died going into a Sarlacc, like he died, and so really we are to figure out what had happened via that whole situation, and to also find out that Boba Fett is to be a crime lord and is to, of course, be the replacement of Jabba the Hutt at some point, and so. But we're also harping on the fact of, like, didn't he die? Well, here's the thing. There is quite a bit of flashbacks, and there is quite a bit of things kind of telling Boba Fett's story. And so people could get a little jumbled and a little confused with certain things. Really because we have certain references that come from The Mandalorian or stuff that is coming from Star Wars Attack of the Clones, or we can just have a lot of just kind of Easter eggs that had come from the 4, 5, and 6 movies that are to be placed in here. Really, with a lot of this stuff, I was like, I'm always worried about covering a Star Wars thing because I feel like I need to know a billion different characters because I feel like I need to. Because hence to tell the story, but also to figure out who any of these things actually are. For me to not have to just describe them, it would be much easier to know their names. So, with that said, how did I feel about this show? Well, I felt really good about this show. I really enjoyed it. Really, for me, I was like, yeah, 4, 5, and 6, yeah. Give me some of that. Like, give me a lot of references of stuff from that. How they're trying to recreate all those pieces and all those places and all these things that are so familiar. I felt so good about it. Where kind of the Mandalorian did kind of feel like its own thing for the most point. Did kind of feel that it wasn't going into hefty amount of familiar territory for me, whereas this show goes into a hefty amount of familiar places for me to enjoy. So, yeah, going into this episode, we kind of span to a different number of places, either Tatooine or, of course, Mos Espa and Jabba's palace and just like a number of places. And so going into this show, a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, but uh, it's really kind of laying the groundwork to help you understand this character, or to really just be kind of this like kind of slow introduction or reintroduction of this character. But then we go on and get into a little bit of action towards the end of this episode to just be like, okay, here's possibly where the story is going to head. And so that's pretty interesting to me. Plus, we also have to kind of figure out, like, it's the whodunit of who was to, of course, send these things out to eventually go and take down Boba Fett and his people. I say his people because right out of the gate, it seems that Boba Fett is to not be alone in this show. So, with that said, I think I'm going to go into that double 5 time territory. Let's just go into, of course, this thing called a spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about that time again to spoil this episode. There's a lot of going on. There's a lot. So we go in and, of course, have really, to me, the opening of this episode is a empty Joppa palace, where, of course, uh, we have Boba Fett in some uh, Bacta tank because he is healing from his Sarlacc injuries. Because we end up, of course, having these references of Star Wars Attack of the Clones from Camino, where, of course, Boba is holding the helmet of his father, as his helmet was to be off his father's head because his father said was to get chopped off, of course, by Windu's character, Mace Windu, Samuel Jackson's character. So and yeah, so we have, of course, that reference, and then we oh no, wait. Camino is the place of uh, Camino is the place of Boba's birth, but Geonosis is the place where, of course, Boba was to hold his father's helmet when his father was to die. There we go. I'm thinking of the names here. So now we go on, of course, to the place where now where Boba Fett is to seem to have died. So we have Boba Fett in his Sarlacc, and we have him kind of pushing around, and he ends up seeing this stormtrooper, which he ends up grabbing this stormtrooper's air to put inside his helmet. And so, because this stormtrooper is already dead, not quite sure how this stormtrooper wound up in this Sarlacc, because there isn't a reference of here of how this stormtrooper ended up there. But I'm assuming you get all kind of random things, where eventually Jabba the Hutt is just to have been kind of made enemies of any number of people. But anyways, so we go on here, and we, of course, have Boba, the way of which that he is to survive out of this, of course, Sarlacc. He goes on, and he is to use a flame to go, and I'm assuming heat up the location that he's in, so he can just go on and make his way out of this Sarlacc without, of course, being worried that it's going to attack him, because it's basically dead. Uh, so I'm assuming that Boba Fett had killed this Sarlacc, because I remember from the other movie where supposedly a Sarlacc is to be able to take 1,000 years to digest anything. And so I kind of thought that that was kind of an interesting thing, where I'm like, yeah, of course, Boba Fett isn't going to be freaking completely consumed right away because of his armor and so on and so. But I'm sure he still has this injury, and so the reason why he is in that tank, trying to heal himself, is because of his scars, of which that he had forcibly had to go through to burn his way through that Sarlacc. So we go on here, and once Boba Fett is to dig his way out of this desert, we have him just covered head to toe in just freaking sand and desert and whatever. All of a sudden, we have these Jawas that appear and go and collect all of his armor, which I guess is to be a reference to the Mandalorian moment where he is to lose all of his armor, and then eventually, somewhere down the road, he is to eventually get it and collect it all back. So, but we have, of course, after this moment, we have some Tusken Raiders who go on and take Boba and tie his hands and basically just force him to walk all the way to this camp. But then a Boba eventually gets exhausted, and so they're just dragging him to this camp. Of course, using these banthas, and supposedly they're all traveling in one single file. I guess weirdly, there's this thing where they're to only go in a single file because that way you would know like how many numbers they are. I guess that's the weird thing about Tusken Raiders, is the tradition of that. Because I think there's a reference somewhere in some other Star Wars movie where they talk about that. Oddly, so once they do make it to this camp that I guess is weirdly to not be the same as, of course, from Star Wars, the one episode where Anakin is going and like killing all those Tusken Raiders. Supposedly, like I think the tents that they have in the background here are kind of much more teepeed like, where in the Star Wars, where Anakin is to go and slay all those Tusken Raiders, and he's like, I slaughtered them like animals. Like, I guess those tents are weirdly different. I think people were going on and like mentioning that, how it's like, hey, that's not accurate. Weirdly, I don't know why. I don't know why like it mattered to those people. But that was the one thing that I think quickly came up when people are going on and talking about this show. So, but we go on here and we have, of course, a Boba who is to be in this camp and is to, of course, have another guy who is being tied up and held next to him, who is to be a Rodanian. A Rodanian. He kind of looks like Guido to me. Guido, the alien that, of course, was to have the complicated thing of like, did Han shoot first? But yeah, this character looks like the Guido character, but of course he's more like orangish red, whereas Guido would be this kind of like greenish or greenish blue. So we go on here and we have, of course, also this kind of dog-like character called a Massive, and we consistently have this thing kind of watching over both Boba and this uh, Rodian, Rodayan, Rodayan. Anyways, so but eventually we have at one point Boba trying to escape, and so when he ends up escaping, of course the Massive is like, hey, he's trying to escape, and so we have, of course, Boba like kind of choking this Massive out, but then we don't want to show that this Massive is to actually get killed here, so Boba just kind of pets the thing, showcasing that it's still alive, which we see it alive later, and he's like, hey, like, no hard feelings. So we have Boba getting out of his tank, and now we have, of course, a character that is assisting him, of course, called um, Phoenix Chen, and of course from I think the Mandalorian series because I've seen her before. And of course, there is to be some service drones that are kind of circling around Boba as he's to get out of his tank because he, of course, is to get his Boba Fett armor on. Weirdly, we have a lot of things going on here that seem to be very familiar to really old movies, like kind of those Egyptian or like Ben-Hur kind of films could be very familiar uh, to a lot of this episode, and a lot of people could compare and showcase certain scenes here. So we have, of course, the 8D8 that is to go on and tell both Chan and of course Boba here that there is to be a number of people that are to be paying tribute uh, to, of course, both of them, and that there's going to be a line of people that are kind of coming up to just give them things. So the first person that, of course, is to come up here is to be a uh, what is the name here? Aqualush Dawn. And so this Aqualush Dawn is to come to, of course, Boba, and he is going and saying things in his language, and of course Boba is to go to Chan and say like, "Did you understand a word that guy just said?" And she's like, "I think he just said friendship. I don't know." And so Boba's like, "Man, we need to get a droid, a translator droid. Like we need to like we don't know what these people are saying." So the next up of that is actually a thing that I thought was a character called Bask or Bosk, Bossk. I thought it was an assassin called Bosk, but I thought wrong. That's what I naturally assumed that this character was because this character looks very familiar to that character from the other Star Wars movies. But it's actually to be a character called Doc, Dokk, Brasi, and so Boba Fett is like, "Oh, hey, yeah, like that was my former boss," and so it seems that Doc here is to go on and pay as tribute some Wookiee skin because I guess Boba Fett has had some history of, I guess, like Wookiee skin. Seems weird. Anyways, so but now we also have the Mos Espo's mayor's assistant, who is Mock Shays, who is to go on and come in and mention that he basically wants payment from Boba Fett. Like, hey, since you're here, pay me money. And Boba Fett is like, is he seriously asking me for a payment? And Chan's like, yes. And because Boba's like, I'm the crime lord here. Why should I be paying him? He should be paying me. And they're like, well, so like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to kill him? And Boba Fett's like, no, like just let him go. Like that'll be fine. And like we'll kind of like I'm wondering if since they didn't pay, maybe this assistant might have sent some assassins out to him. Not quite sure. We'll figure it out in later episodes. So, but we also have some Gamorreans who are to appear here and are to eventually kind of lay down for Boba Fett, and Boba Fett's like, well, hey, like, how about you guys? How about both of you Gamorreans? How about you go on and you kind of just walk with me? You just kind of like be my bodyguards. And so Chen is like, well, that's kind of a wasted investment. It's like, man, Boba Fett's like, nah, like whatever. Like, but here's also the thing. The weird thing that I don't like about this show is we have Boba Fett who consistently takes his helmet off, but it seems that Boba Fett is not really connected to the Mandalorian, so he'll take his helmet off because there's a whole reason for that. That he wants to like let everybody know and like intimidate them by taking his helmet off. Uh, so so going into this, we go into Mos Espa, and we go on to this bar that, of course, is to be um, Twi'leks Bar, TWI, like or TWILEK bar. I know there's a symbol in between the I and the L, but Twi'lek Twi'leks bar. That's so easy to pronounce. So we go, of course, into this bar, and we of course go on to see a woman named Garza Fwip. Fwip. And so Garza ends up going on and giving the Boba some Republican coins because, of course, they have like the Republic logo on them. She ends up dumping them all in his helmet, and so Chanet's making the joke of like, well, hey, I guess your helmet is a little bit more shinier than mine is because like she has nothing in her helmet. Like, yeah, I guess so. But the coins end up getting dumped into the road, into the desert road when they leave this place, which kind of sucks. So like, we end up having Boba just having just none of that coin, even though he was to get payment. So but we go on here and we have astromech droids that are, of course, giving a bunch of drinks to a lot of people. And so I'm like, well, hey, why isn't Boba getting any droids? Like, come on, man. We end up seeing the Cantina band seemingly in the background, and they're playing their same old song, but kind of it sounds different. It sounds a tweedily bit different. The like that's basically the same song from the other Star Wars, of course, movie, but they tweak it, they change it to where it sounds a little bit different. But it's the same freaking song. Kind of like with Family Guy, where they're like, "Hey guys, play that same song." Like they make that joke. So, so yeah, like the Cantina band is in here, and it's the same old characters, and I'm like, man, like how much did they have to recreate here, and how much did they just have sparingly lying around somewhere in some museum or some kind of something where it's just, hey, fork over the dough because we still have this. Like, I'm sure they probably had to recreate it because it's been so many decades. Like, I can't see that all of this stuff is just lying around somewhere, but still, it's cool. Um, but Chan also, when they were getting paid tributes, I think they were also going and having Chan reference that there, of course, had like rancors and stuff like underneath if anybody was to eventually like tick Boba off at some point when they're going through all of these tributes. And so like, ooh, like I want to see a rancor. Like let's get those out. Let's pop those bad boys out. Let's drop somebody into the rancor pit and just have him being eaten like almost Luke was, but Luke was able to kind of just attack this rancor and have this door be slammed on it and kill it off. So we're gonna see if there's any more rancors that are kind of if somebody's getting dropped anytime soon in this episode. But anyways, uh, we have these guys after all these Easter eggs are going on. After we see a number of these robots that are kind of used in all these kind of weird, goofy ways, we go on here and we have these guys exit this bar to all of a sudden get attacked by assassins. I don't know what they actually are to be called. They're just called, I think, assassins here. who are to have these electro stats or staffs, and they're to have these kind of like cool looking shields that, of course, are to be like red. So, like, I'm kind of wondering who they're tied to. Could they possibly be tied to Darth Maul, considering like the kind of approach to this is to be kind of like this red kind of a visual here? Because it seems like a lot of people are immediately thinking that there's some kind of reference to Darth Maul in this episode. So immediately people are thinking that these assassins has something to do with Darth Maul. Don't know. So, but we have these assassins going on and uh, beating down, of course, not only Boba, and they're like electrifying him, and they're chasing Chan through this rooftop. We also have the Gamorreans that are also kind of slicing through some of these assassins also, and that part looked really cool. It's like, yeah, Gamorreans, yeah. Just have those weird looking knives that are slicing through these assassins. So after it seems that we get through that part of having Chan go and beat up all of these assassins via rooftop, and it seems like we're going and we took all these assassins out. We go and we have yet another flashback uh, where Boba Fett was to see these Red Key Raiders who are going through this seemingly Tatooine farm, and so we end up having both Boba Fett and this, of course, uh, Rodan, who are to be held captive by these Tusken Raiders, and they're forcing these characters to go on and dig for these kind of water, these water. I want to say they're like bowls, but they're not exactly bowls. They're like coconuts, because it kind of breaks down like that. It seems like Star Wars has some weird water coconuts for this show. I don't know what exactly they're called. I didn't get the technical word for that one. But so while this Tusken Raider is just kind of just maybe sleeping, maybe waiting for these guys to give him more of these watered containers, let's just say, to ease that up, to make it easier. We all of a sudden have, of course, Boba, who's going to this uh, Rodan, and he's telling him hey, like you should have helped me before. You should have helped me um, escape, but you didn't, because this guy, instead of helping Boba escape, he kind of let everybody know that Boba was escaping, like a douche. So Boba is still kind of upset with this guy, but he's like, well, hey, uh, I can take you as far as Anchorhead. Like, we could go together, and we could still leave here. And weirdly, I think we have the Rodan, who has this kind of response of supposedly a thing. There's so many like little minute things that come across in this scene as possibly a re-referencing from other stuff from other movies. But so the Rodan is going on, and he's digging for more water and for more water containers, and then all of a sudden uh we have the Rodan who has defined this like hand of a thing, and he's like, okay, what is this? Like, what the heck is this? And so all of a sudden we have this centaur who just appears, and is to grab onto this Rodan, and I think grabs on to Boba, and so the centaur is to appear here, this kind of almost Mortal Kombat looking character with its four arms, this centaur, and so we go on here, and we kind of have the way of which that Jabba the Hutt was to be killed from Star Wars with the whole like slave Leia thing. We end up having Boba, who ends up taking this chain because we have Boba telling Rodan that he's gonna choke him out with this chain, which is to be a foreshadowing moment that now, since Boba only has a chain as a weapon, he's going to choke out the centaur with this chain. And so we, of course, have this Tusken Raider who is to take all of the credit for this centaur being killed, because he goes on and takes this head to his other people. I'm like, yeah, I killed this. And they're like, yeah, sure, you killed it. Isn't that great that you killed this massive centaur and also gave us plenty of meat to eat, which you didn't because you just brought back this head. Like, how about you bring back the rest of the body and we'll love you. But we end up having one of the raiders go and give, of course, Boba Fett this thing of water, because like, hey man, like, I knew you actually did it, not this little small Tusken Raider. Yeah, like, you did it, not him. So really, I think that is to, of course, be most of this episode. I say with a question mark. But yeah, I think that is to mostly be what happens in this episode. So I think I'm going to get out of here. I think this episode was like 38 minutes long, and I think I had to take that much to describe all of this. So I'm sorry about how long this takes. But there's a lot of description things to just go in and talk about. And there's a lot of places and whatever. So hopefully these episodes are a lot easier, so my reviews will be a lot shorter. So with that said, I think I'm going to get out of here. One thing that I think I forgot about, and I want to see if there is a thing that still exists here. Let me pause here for 1 second. One thing. So when Boba Fett was to come out of the Sarlacc, we end up seeing, of course, the sail barge, of course, from when Jabba the Hutt was on that sail barge, and when eventually he was to get killed on that sail barge, and which means like nothing. But we also had this like tentacle that, of course, was when Lando was, of course, like on that, like kind of that tentacle thing where he's being grabbed, and Han was to shoot it. Like, that thing is still, I think, supposedly people were saying in some video that same tentacle thing was the exact same from the other Star Wars movie, where I'm like, I don't know if I can believe that. Like, I think they reused a lot of stuff here, or I think they just remade stuff more than just like found it somewhere. I think they had to, like, let me know in the comments below, like, what you think, if they reused a lot of stuff, that all of this stuff was just hanging in some museum somewhere, or if they actually used or remade all this stuff. Let me know in the comments below what you felt about the Book of Boba Fett. But I think I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.